Hello, SDNL drivers. I wanted to do a video as a follow-up on our safety meeting this year and hope that each of you will take the time to watch this. Been noticing a lot of harsh braking events and just wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys about as a 25-year veteran of the road, the importance of managing your vehicle as well as managing the distance between your vehicle and the vehicles in front of you. As when I went through training to become a professional truck driver, it was important for me to train my eyes, to learn to manage distance, to pay attention to what vehicles were doing instead of necessarily looking for brake lights, turn signals, things of that matter. As a matter of fact, the first class at Charlotte Diesel Driving School a long time ago, the instructor asked the question to the whole class, what does it mean when you see a car or vehicle with their turn signal on? And the whole class answered, well, it means they're getting ready to turn. And the instructor said, no, that means the turn signal works. And that is something that has stuck with me throughout my professional career as a driver and now as a safety manager, is that you can't always trust what other human beings are going to do, especially when it's on the road. If there's anything you can count on is that more times than not, they're going to do what wouldn't make a lot of sense for you to do. I know each of you have seen vehicles running down the interstate with their turn signal flashing where they didn't turn it off or it didn't click off automatically. Some of you may have been guilty of that yourselves. But what I am noticing as I'm seeing these videos of the harsh braking events, that more times than not, the driver is increasing or is maintaining his speed, even though he is gaining on the vehicles in front of him, and is waiting to start slowing the vehicle down once he sees brake lights. Now, for those of you that are tractor trailer drivers, or for those straight trucks that have Jake brakes, you can slow a vehicle down without ever touching the brake pedal. And if the people behind you are only waiting till they see brake lights in order to slow down, then they're having a lot of harsh braking events behind you and would possibly rear end you. And it's important as a driver that you're always looking at more places than just right in front of the truck. You should be looking out in front of the truck as far as you can be. When you're in heavy traffic situations, you should take every opportunity to try to know what's going on as far down the road as you possibly can, and that you're driving the truck being prepared at all times to slow the vehicle down, bring the vehicle to a complete stop if necessary. But always, if you are gaining on those vehicles, that you're slowing down simply by removing your foot from the fuel pedal and letting the weight of the vehicle, if you're on a flat surface, it'll start slowing down on its own. And you can, generally speaking, start slowing the vehicle down without ever having touched your brake pedal, but to have your foot over the brake pedal prepared to react. And I believe that if I saw drivers reacting to the traffic in front of them and not reacting to the brake lights in front of them, that there would be a lot less of the harsh braking events. Now, I fully understand cars darting in front of you and giving you even less room to stop, and causing you to have to get onto the brakes. I've seen a lot of those videos, and I generally dismiss those videos. But the videos that concern me the most are when I see drivers barreling towards other vehicles in front of them, and they haven't bothered to slow the truck down prematurely to prevent themselves from getting into a bad situation. And drivers are under the misconception a lot of times that the only way that they're going to make good time is if they're constantly going as fast as they possibly can. When the truth of the matter is when you have to slow a truck down from, say, 65 mile an hour down to 25, 20, 15, even 10 mile an hour, or come to a stop, that is what hurts a driver's time more so than anything else. Or if a driver has to make stops, stopping at a service station to get fuel, or stopping to get a cup of coffee. Professional drivers understand that if they're going to make good time, they've got to keep their driver's door shut. And whenever they're going down the road, that they make good time whenever they're not slowing that vehicle down to a crawl. The misconception of, well, if I run 10 mile an hour over the speed limit, I'll make better time. If you understand how that works, then you don't believe that, because going faster is always putting you in a position to where you're having to slow down, because you're going to be gaining on other vehicles a lot of the times. And truthfully, if you're not gaining on the vehicles, but you're maintaining a constant speed, you're going to make better time. And I would like to see our drivers start putting that in practice when they're out on the road, and would honestly like to see the harsh braking events videos go away for the most part, because drivers are slowing down a little bit, staying back away from traffic, reacting to the traffic that's in front of them in a way that prevents them from slowing down so drastically that it interferes from them being able to get where they need to be on time. I had this discussion with a driver just recently. Seen the driver have a harsh braking event, and then he got all upset at the car in front of him because they slowed down quickly and made a turn and didn't turn their turn signal on, and he got all upset about that. When the truth of the matter was, if that driver was further back from that vehicle going down the road, they would have done that, been out of the way, and he never would have had to hit his brakes. And his time and his response was, well, I was in a hurry. Being in a hurry does not necessarily mean that you have to run faster. It doesn't mean that you have to be right up on top of the vehicles in front of you in order to make good time, in order to be on time. The fact of the matter is that if you have a certain time that you have to be at a point A, from point A to point B, whether you're on time or not has much more to do with what time you leave than how fast you go between point A and point B. Because there's all different types of factors going up and down hills, being heavily loaded, to where a trucker can run from, let's say he runs from Fort Mill, South Carolina to Charleston, South Carolina. Well, there's a lot of pretty good hills, and you're not even getting in the mountains, but there are a lot of pretty good hills to where if that driver is running an average, let's say the truck will run 69 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour. All right. How many times is that truck going to go up a hill, be heavy, and lose speed and come down to 58, 60 mile an hour possibly? Gets into Columbia, the speed limit drops from 70 down to 55. He has to slow down. Traffic's kind of heavy when you're in around Columbia. You get out of Columbia, you get on 26. and you're headed toward Charleston, and Charleston's pretty much flat road then. And you make pretty decent time. But in the overall picture between Fort Mill and Charleston, what did that vehicle average? What was the average speed of that vehicle? Because it wasn't 69 miles per hour. I can promise you that. Never would be. If you drove from here to Charleston, South Carolina, and the slowest you ever got was 65, you're not going to average 65 mile an hour. It just doesn't work that way. Typically speaking, a tractor trailer over normal terrain, just some hills, flat ground, if that truck can run 70, 75 mile an hour, the best that driver is going to do, if he doesn't stop or run into any traffic jams, is about 62 mile an hour average. And he's running as fast as he can go every chance he gets. And he's still going to only average right around 62, 63 mile an hour, because that's just the way it works. The best way to make time is not to have to slow down drastically and not to stop. If you're wanting to make good time between point A and point B, you keep the driver's door shut. You try to have a steady speed. Constantly speeding up and slowing down, that doesn't get you there any quicker. It absolutely doesn't. I dare any of you out there that watch this video to test me on that and prove that I'm wrong. Because I've done it. I've been in trucks that weren't governed. I've been in trucks that would run triple digits, and running wide open didn't get me there any faster. Because when you're going that fast, you're constantly gaining on other traffic, and you're going to have to slow back down. What got me from point A to point B the quickest was not getting out of the truck, not stopping. When a tractor trailer goes to pull off at a truck stop or a rest stop, has to use the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, fuel, whatever, just from the time that driver takes his foot off the fuel pedal and starts slowing that truck down until he's back up to the same speed he was running. And that's not going to a truck stop, parking the truck and going inside and getting a sandwich and getting a cup of coffee. That's just for him to pull off the ramp, come to a complete stop, and then take off again. It takes an average of 20 minutes for that driver to get back to the top speed he was at when he started slowing down. These are just facts of the matter. Facts that professional truck drivers, both tractor trailer and straight truck, should all have a good understanding of. You should drive your truck in a way that you're not going to put yourself in situations that's going to cause excessive stress to you. And I've seen drivers who put themselves in a situation where the car in front of them reacted like cars do, like they always have done, like they always will, because they can stop on a dime and they're not worried about what's behind them. They haven't even noticed that you're back there. And you're giving them hand gestures, telling them they're number one, flipping them the bird, getting upset, cussing and raising all kinds of sand at them for doing what they do. When you, as the professional driver, should not have put yourself in a situation to have experienced that in the first place. As a professional driver, you're the one that's responsible for that vehicle and controlling that vehicle, and only that vehicle. But if you're putting that vehicle in positions to where it's causing you stress, or it's causing you to get in situations where you're having to slam on the brakes and you're having to slow the vehicle down as quickly as you can in as short a space as you can because you haven't managed the speed of that vehicle, you have no one to get upset with but yourself. I challenge any of you drivers to prove what I'm telling you is wrong. Prove what I'm telling you is not correct. If you make a habit, and I've said it in every safety meeting since I've been at SDNL, as a driver, if traffic is always moving away from you, and you're going to have a mixture of that. You're going to have, grandma and grandpa, they're going to be, running along in the wrong lane, running 5 mile an hour under the speed limit. You're always going to have different situations where you have some people that, they're speed demons. They don't know how to go slow. They don't know how to do the speed limit. And then you're going to have other people that they're just doing everything under the sun except paying attention to what they're doing, driving a vehicle. And 1 minute they're running 10 mile an hour under the speed limit. The next minute they're running 15 mile an hour over the speed limit. And trust me, as a professional driver, that type of stuff would irritate me to death. But because honestly, I like to get on the road, get a good speed, set my cruise. And generally speaking, I'll set my cruise at around 5 mile an hour over the speed limit. And for the most part, I can ride along. I never get upset. Never, have to deal with anything because all of the speed demons are so far gone down the road. I don't have to worry about them. I might have to typically from time to time, I'll gain on, grandma and grandpa, and I'll have to, speed up a little bit, get around them. But managing my vehicle, because honestly, that's the only vehicle I have control over. I don't have control over anything else. And I'm not going to be upset when other people are doing things that they naturally do. People drive their cars every day, probably more so than any other time in history, like they can't get killed in that car. I see people do some things that's just absolutely scares me to death. And they manage to do it and live to tell about it. But people drive with an entitled attitude a lot of times, like they have the right and that you need to get out of the way and that you're in the way. But you as a driver, you've got a job to do. You're out there making a living on the road. And you need to be doing that in a way that gets you from point A to point B safely, gets you from point A to point B without your stress level going through the roof, without giving hand gestures and cussing and raising all kinds of sand at people through your windshield or through your window, like that's going to matter, like they're going to hear you, like they're going to, that's going to affect them or change them from doing the things that they do, and it doesn't really do anything, period, other than get you upset, which causes you at that point to be less vigilant, not to pay as close attention as you should be. Another thing that drivers really always have to guard against is getting in a daze. You should train your eyes to constantly be looking in your mirrors, scanning different areas of the road, so that you don't get into a daze, because that's generally when that happens, you're not paying attention. Even though you're looking straight ahead, you're not paying attention. And those vehicles that, have slowed down in front of you, but don't have their brakes mashed, are the ones that you're going to have to manage. And usually that's in a last minute situation where you're slamming on your brakes, trying to slow the vehicle down to keep from hitting them. So we talked back in February about habits. It's very easy as a driver to get into some very bad, unhealthy habits. And I think that it's the unhealthy habits that we talked about back in February that is causing a lot of these harsh braking events, where drivers are not managing the speed of their vehicle in relation to the vehicles around them, to a level that prevents the driver from having to slow the vehicle down drastically, and prevents the driver from wearing the brakes out on the truck, because that's another thing that happens. The harder you're hitting the brakes, the more you're hitting the brakes, the sooner that vehicle is going to need a brake job, which is extremely expensive. And you as a driver can help prevent that from happening if you'll use the brakes of the vehicle the proper way. So I want to challenge you. We haven't had an at-fault accident yet. Knock on wood. We're going into the 4th month of 2023. As those of you know that watched the video from the safety meeting, I challenged you that if we have 0 at-fault accidents as a company, that in 2024 we would be handing out some very nice safety bonuses to drivers. And want to remind you that's still on the table. But if you continue to tempt fate, eventually fate's going to win. Eventually, you're going to rear end someone, and I've never seen anybody rear end anybody that where the person that rear ended the person in front of them wasn't at fault, especially if they're in a commercial motor vehicle. 99.9% of the time, if you're in a tractor trailer or you're in a straight truck and you rear end somebody else, it was your fault. I appreciate you guys, and I want you to continue to improve as a driver, continue to hone your skills as a driver to make you safer, better, and more productive day in and day out. And I look forward to hearing comments from you guys. I look forward to the conversations with you guys where you've came back and you've proved me wrong. Likewise, those of you that go out and you put this to the test and you realize this old gray-headed man may know a little bit more about trucking than you thought he did, you can come back and tell me I was right too. I won't rub it in, I promise. You guys have a great day. Appreciate you. Thanks.